My first website was selling art. I was in my late 20s and had considered spending a fortune for original artwork for my new townhome. It was the early 2000s, and a magical new place on the internet called eBay provided a much cheaper price for the very same artists, the very same paintings. It took only seconds for my mind to make the connection. I could buy cheap and sell high, and all I needed was a fancy website optimized for search engines to make a bundle. I was pseudo successful, and over the years, I've made many more websites. Some have created revenue, and others have just cost me money, time, and energy. But my dream was one in which many share. Set up the site, maximize traffic, sell something, and watch the passive income roll in. Or better yet, sell the site for millions of dollars and be done with it. A dream. A wonderful dream. But is it reality? Well, my guests today say that it could be. Adam Smith and Mark Mars are the co-founders of Niche Website Builders. They are experts in content production and niche site development, offering valuable insights on the growing trend of website investing. Adam and Mark, welcome to Earn and Invest. Adam, I want to start with you. Tell me about the first website you ever made money off of.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having us on, Jordan. It's a pleasure to be here. Wow, I guess where do I start? The first actual website where I made decent money off, I guess, money where I could, job replacement income was, I was working for a digital marketing agency. I was a kind of like a digital strategist. I was selling SEO strategies and digital strategies into universities and education providers. And I'd been doing this for someone else for a long time. And I'd known about marketplaces where you can buy and sell kind of these types of websites. This one in particular is called Empire Flippers. And I went on there one night. I'd had some savings saved up from working my job. And there was a website on there about barbecuing and grills and smokers. It was earning around $300 to $400 per month passively, essentially. And it was priced at around, I think it was $10,000 or $11,000. And I bought the website and I'd then worked on it in the evenings and over the weekends. I was adding tons of content. I was doing lots of research. Funny fact is, we don't really even have smokers here in the UK. We have barbecues and grills, but we don't have smokers. So I bought something I really knew nothing about, to be honest. So I delved in, I joined a load of Facebook groups. I was researching competitor websites and really trying to figure out what the space was about, what the best grills were, how they worked. And in doing so, writing content, writing reviews, and essentially growing the website. I did that pretty much every evening and weekend for about 8 months. And then I sold the website for around $60,000, which at the time, the profit was more than I was making at my day job for the whole year. And I thought, I need to do more of this. How do I do more? I went and spoke to my boss literally the next day and said, I want to drop down to 3 days a week. How do I do that? And they said, you can't. You're in a client-facing role. It's full-time. And I quit the next day with my money in the bank and went and bought another one. Literally, well, I say literally the next day. It was about 5 or 6 weeks later because I was tired working a full-time job and writing content and researching in the evenings and weekends for 8 months, pretty much solid. I was tired, but I quit, took some couple of weeks and went again. And that was how I started the whole journey, essentially.
Mark, it's an interesting question, right? Because he bought a website that was already cash flowing. When you first got into this, did you build your own websites or did you buy websites that already were selling a product?
Yeah, good question. So a bit different from Adam. I started from scratch. So I built a brand new website on a fresh domain, decided to go into it was more like a cookery kind of niche. So it wasn't recipes and things like that. It was more reviewing like cookware or kind of kitchen equipment, I guess is the way to put it. So it was making money. I spent about 2 years on it, and I was making money through ads, making money through Amazon affiliates. So with Amazon affiliates, it's like any affiliate relationship. If you write a good review about a product, somebody then clicks through on your page through to Amazon, they can get a kickback and you can get a kickback and a commission on that sale. So I was making money from that and from ads on the site. And over the course of 2 years, got it to making like $2,000 a month approximately, and then sold that one for around $75,000, so around in that region.
So Adam, in a moment, we're going to talk about what a niche website actually is, because you use that term in the name of your business. But before we do, it's kind of a funny question. Do you need to be passionate about what your website is selling or what your website is about? Because Adam, I heard you say that you didn't even know about smokers, right? When you bought the site.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And in all honesty, I think it depends. As most SEO type people will say, it depends. That's the answer for almost everything.
And SEO stands for search engine optimization, right? I think most people know that already, but just this idea that we can make our websites primed for the search engines like Google to see them. But go ahead.
So I'd say if you were starting your own website or you were buying a website and you plan to create all the content yourself and you plan to work on it exclusively yourself and not outsource anything, I do think being passionate about the space you're in is going to be very important, because you have to stay motivated. For me, the motivation for that first website came because it was my first website. I was excited. I was driven to make it a success. But most people, and we see this all the time in this space, they'll start a website in a niche that they know nothing about or they're not passionate about. And that excitement soon dies off and they get bored with the project, because with SEO and with search engine optimization, it's not usually an overnight success. It's something that you have to work at for a long time. And people typically will fail in the first couple of months because they don't see that instant success and they're not passionate to keep going. On the flip side, if you were to look at this from a pure investment perspective and you weren't planning on writing the content yourself and doing lots of the work and you wanted to outsource it, I don't think it's important to be passionate about the space at all. I think you just need to understand the business model, understand what goes into making a successful niche site, and then basically look at the process and being passionate about the process rather than the actual topic itself.
Adam, are you passionate about smokers now?
Well, I'm passionate about barbecues. This is still not a big thing here in the UK. And funny story, a brand reached out. So a smoker brand reached out to me through the website back then and said, "Hey, we love your website. We love what you're doing. We'd love to send you a smoker for you to review and take photos of." And I was like, "This is awesome." I sent them my address back in the UK. And they were like, "Actually, we take it back. We thought you were in the US. We don't ship to the UK." So I still don't even have one.
So Mark, help me explain. I mentioned that word niche as in niche website builders. What is a niche website specifically?
Yeah, so I guess a niche website is a website that in general will cover like a specific topic, a specific area. So the way that we think about niche sites is that we think about them as blogs ultimately, or content sites. People use different names for these things, but essentially we're creating useful content to an audience on specific topics. So, Adam mentioned barbecue and smokers. And mine was like kitchen equipment and utensils and stuff. So that's the way that we kind of think of a niche site. And a niche site could, you can expand out on a niche site over time. You can start small. We recommend you start very, very narrow because you want to become an authority on a specific niche. Google likes that. With the way that search engine optimization works these days, you can't be writing a blog on multiple different topics and expect them to rank. Google wants to see that you have some authority and you've been writing about this regularly. So you could start narrow, but then there's no reason why you can't expand that out. And it's good to allow yourself some room to be able to do that. And the most obvious example I give is that you might want to start a sports site which covers lots of different sports, but you just want to pick one to start with. You want to pick baseball or tennis and just go at that until it's successful, until you're really starting to get some traffic, and then you can think about opening it out into other sports and things. But then you need to take the next sport and as an individual silo itself, and then go really hard at that. And so you expand it over time, but you need to really be focused on one specific niche at a time.
So Mark, let's talk about the business, because ultimately I think a lot of people listening right now are starting to ask themselves the question, do I want to get into the website business myself? Is that a good way of making money? So let's start with the first question. You both mentioned both cash flow as well as selling the site. For the new person going in, should their idea be, I'm going to make some passive income through cash flow? Or is the real idea, let's build this thing up and sell it for a huge profit?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the beauty of this business model. You need some investment, either time or cash investment up front. But once the site starts making money, like you said, there's kind of this income that you start getting on a monthly basis, that then you can kind of go ahead and reinvest and make your asset bigger, like over time, and you don't have to put in any new money again. And you continue to make it bigger and bigger and bigger, so that you do have that kind of big sale down the road. Now, like, people like use this for different reasons. We have customers that have like quit their day job. They run a portfolio of a few websites. They quit their day job and they want that as just replacing their old salary that they used to have, and have that on an ongoing basis. What you find that people will end up doing over time is they'll create a portfolio. They'll have some which are their bread and butter that they keep for cash flow on an ongoing basis, and then they'll focus heavily on kind of growing other sites with the view of selling it. And then they'll sell one, and then they'll start again with some more, either buying or starting from scratch. And they say, once people become established in this space and they have a portfolio, you end up with a mix of, here's my cash flow sites and here's the sites that I'm growing to sell down the road.
Adam, is the metric we're really looking at traffic? I mean, is that the measure of success? Is that what we're really trying to do, is just drive as much traffic as possible to the site?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, without traffic, you don't really have revenue. And for most of our customers, the initial primary source of income will be get as much traffic as you can and then monetize it with display ads. Now, display ads, they're not like the old school adverts where you have to go out and find advertisers manually to come and put adverts on your website. You have to manage inventory and stuff. It's all done programmatically these days. So you sign up to an ad network. An example would be Ezoic or Mediavine. They give you a little piece of code that you put on your website, and they'll automatically fill your website with adverts and pay you at the end of the month. So display ads is a very easy business model. And essentially, the more traffic you get, the more adverts are shown, the more revenue you make. And to give you an idea of kind of what that revenue model looks like, it depends based on the niche, and it depends on a variety of factors, but you're typically looking at around $15 all the way up to $50 per 1,000 visitors. So, you can kind of do the math, and as your visitors go up, the monthly traffic goes up. But the good thing then is that's just the starting point. And there's a ton of different options for additional monetization. So Mark mentioned affiliate programs as well, where you've got traffic, your base monetization is display ads, and then you start working directly with brands or companies in the space that sell a product or a service, and you drive traffic to those guys in exchange for a commission or a cut on the sale. You can create your own digital products. You can create your own courses. You can create your own e-products where, the profit margin is huge. And again, it's a case then of, you've got the traffic, you just find unique and innovative ways to monetize them. You might use that to build a newsletter and use the newsletter to drive traffic back to the website, or you might use it to build a sponsorship of the newsletter. There's a ton of different options open for monetization once you have the traffic. So yeah, traffic really is the starting point. And once you have it, it opens up a lot of different opportunities.
So Mark, let's talk about building traffic. We mentioned briefly SEO, or search engine optimization, but explain for the audience again what search engine optimization is, and how much can we as people manipulate that, especially maybe novices who are coming to this newly. I found myself that it's not an easy nut to crack if you don't want to put some time into it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, at the very highest level, search engine optimization is the process of working out what people are searching for on the web via Google or other search engines, and targeting those things that a lot of people are searching for, because you don't want to be writing an article about something that one person searches for in a month. You want to have at least a certain amount of volume. So you have to kind of do an exercise of what's called keyword research up front, where you're going to explore what people are looking for. So there's a number of ways of doing that. We won't go into all the technicalities. We have a method that we share on our YouTube channel, which we call the tomb raiding method, which we've purposely made very like process driven, very easy to follow, I guess. So systemized, that's the word I was looking for, Adam. Thanks. Yeah, so a systemized process. So because if I did some keyword research and Adam did some keyword research and someone else did some keyword research, it's very open to interpretation. And you go down your own rabbit holes and you have your own kind of styles and techniques. And running an agency, we wanted to make sure we maintain some consistency, but also just have a very descript way of and process-driven, systemized way of doing things. So we have something called the tomb raiding technique, which you can check out on our site. So if you are getting started, that's a great way to do it because it helps you kind of find. Basically, it's a lot of competitor research. You're looking at people that are already successful in that space and saying, okay, I'm starting out. Here's where my site is. Like, how can I compete with them? What are they writing about that I can also write about and rank for and get some traffic for? So that's ultimately what we're trying to do with search engine optimization.
Adam, ultimately what we're talking about is creating good content, right? Good content that helps you sell things, good content that really grabs the search engines and sends traffic your way. How much of that should we be doing ourselves versus maybe if you're more entrepreneurial, are you hiring that out? Because I know part of what you guys do there is actually create content, right?
Yeah, for sure. So it is. It's all about creating useful, helpful content. In fact, recently there was a Google update literally called the Helpful Content Update, where they're promoting and pushing up content that Google deems helpful to the top of the results and demoting content that they deem unhelpful lower down. So it's all about creating quality content. And kind of to answer the second part of the question, it really depends if you are doing this yourself and it's a passion project and you're creating it and you've got a specific expertise in the niche that you're going into. You've probably got an advantage there because you are an expert and you can create extra helpful content. But for an investment purpose, most people will outsource their content essentially. And especially if they're starting out, it's really hard to understand, what does Google think helpful content is? How is that meant to be structured on the website in technical terms? How is the headings meant to be formatted? How do you optimize the piece of content to grab, things like a featured snippet? If you've ever Googled something, you get the little bit of text at the top, or a couple of sentences that answers the question. That's called a featured snippet. You can optimize your piece of content the way it's written to try and win that on Google. So for someone that's brand new and starting out, it almost pays really to outsource the content, even for a short period of time, to understand how it's formatted, how it's written. And one of our services or our content service essentially is the full end-to-end service. So you come to us and you say, hey, I want to make a website all about reptiles. And we'll say, okay, awesome. We will do all that keyword research for you. We'll go out and we'll look at the competitors, the market, understand who's writing what and is it working for them? How much traffic is it driving? Do we think we can create content that's better than them? And if we can, do we think that it's possible that we could take that traffic from them? And that's the way the plan is kind of pulled together. And then we've got a team of in-house writers. We create about 4 to 4.5 million words of content every month. And that's all they do. They're specialists in creating this type of content. They're not creating an ebook today and a newsletter series tomorrow and then coming to write a bit of blog content today. They're just writing this content day in, day out, essentially. So they know how it's formatted. We've got a very specific way of doing that. And then we've also got a team after that, which then take that content and actually put it on the website for you. They'll upload it. They'll make sure it's formatted correctly. They make sure that it looks nice. There's images in there. There's all other little technicalities if you're using affiliate programs, that it links to the correct program and the tracking is correct and things. So for a beginner starting out thinking, where do I go? Outsourcing to someone that does the full end-to-end can be really beneficial because you can see this is what the keyword research looks like and what good keyword research looks like. And this is what good content looks like. And this is the way it should be presented on the website in the correct way. So yeah, I'm a big fan of outsourcing for that reason. And also outsourcing becomes necessary when you want to scale as well. It's impossible really to scale these types of websites if you're writing all the content yourself.
I was about to say, Mark, we think a lot about content, but as Adam was talking about, it's not just the words, but how they actually appear on the screen and how you've organized your homepage and all the links, et cetera. It's a little bit more complicated than just having the right words, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and no, it isn't. I would say, like, absolutely. There's, you can go deep. Like, you talk to SEOs and people that are into this space, and they'll go deep talking about the pros of this and the cons of that. But at the end of the day, if you get the keyword research right and you're writing good quality content, you're halfway there. To be honest, ultimately over time, once you want your site to be more competitive in the space, you're going to need people linking to you. Now that comes naturally and organically once you start getting lots of traffic, but there are ways that you can kind of help do that, and that's that we offer a digital PR service which very much does that, which provides a site with some links which Google will see as a vote of confidence. But sometimes you can overcomplicate it. At the end of the day, all you're doing is do good keyword research and good content, and you'll get you a long way. Now there are little knobs and things that you can tweak and to improve things, and additional stuff that you need to add onto the site. There's something called schema, which we won't go into now, but schema is becoming more important. That's something you probably want to look at. But to start, just getting started, I think the biggest blocker for a lot of people is just getting started. They freeze. They think oh maybe I'm going to do a site on reptiles. And then they procrastinate over that for a while, and then and just never get started. So I think that the two biggest problems we see is people just never getting started and just doing research forever, and then people giving up too soon because it's not something that happens overnight either. You've got to work at it. But yeah, you can overcomplicate it. So it can be quite simple. But if you want to get down in the detail, which you probably will over time once you start getting some traffic and you start seeing the money coming in, everyone kind of gets the bug a little bit then, and then you can kind of start going into the detail a little bit more and becoming more professional with it.
Adam, talk about the changeable nature of algorithms, especially of search engines, because I imagine when I first learned what SEO was, which was in 2005, 2006, when I had my art website, and my brother, who was incredibly knowledgeable about these things, says, well, you need changing content to catch the SEO so that, the search engines are going to recognize you and there's changing content there. How much has it changed since, let's say, 2005? Is this something that's rapidly evolving from year to year?
Yeah, it's massive. It changes month to month sometimes, and it's especially so over the last 2 years in particular. So I mean, it's Google essentially. We talk about search engine optimization, but most of the organic traffic comes from Google. So when we talk about Google, search engine updates and how it's changed, we're really talking about Google. And in Google's defense, their primary business model essentially is to serve the user what they deem the best possible content and the best possible answer to the query to satisfy that search intent. So they want someone to Google something and the first result be exactly what they're looking for. Now, as Google's got smarter and cleverer over the years, the systems and algorithms that they put in place to understand what someone is searching for and understand the intent behind that, and then understand what the results should be based on that, has changed massively. And they push out updates very frequently. They push out core updates, they're called. So you'll see a big change typically in the results on Google every 6 months or so these days, or sooner. And a big part about being successful in this space is staying ahead of those trends, understanding what Google is looking for, and making sure that you are essentially always doing things which are in best practice. There's tons of people out there, and there's tons of shortcuts. It's called black hat SEO, where you can take advantage of different Google algorithms, and you can take advantage of shortcuts and stuff. But typically, they don't have longevity. They will work for a short period of time. Google will understand what's going on and update their algorithm, and then all of a sudden, you lose all your traffic. So even though things are changing rapidly, one thing which really can keep you safe is just thinking, putting yourself in the shoes of a user that's searching Google. Am I creating a website that I would be proud to show my friends and family, and that answers the topic and covers the topic in full, and is not just nonsense and fluff and stuffed with keywords trying to game the system or anything like that? You've got to be thinking long term, treating it as a business rather than a short term, trying to make some cash quick by getting my website at the top of Google by using all these different shortcuts kind of thing.
We are talking to Adam Smith and Mark Mars, who are the co-founders of Niche Website Builders. We're going to take a short break. I'm Doc G, and this is the Earn and Invest podcast. All right, I'm going to read us back in a moment. Any questions or problems?
No, it was great.
Nope.
You having fun so far? Awesome. We're going to jump right back in, and we're going to move now more to talk about the business. So this, again, is for our listeners. Should they be getting into the business of websites, buying, selling, building, passive income, etc.? All right. And do you guys prefer niche or niche? I use niche because I heard it on another podcast where you guys were on, so I used it. Do you care?
No, go niche, because most of our audience is US, and probably yours are, I imagine.
Even in the US, some people say niche, some people say niche. In fact, I use them interchangeably, but I'll stick with niche. All right. On 3, 2, 1. Let me reintroduce you. We're talking to Adam Smith and Mark Mars. They are experts in content production and niche site development, offering valuable insights on the growing trend of website investing. Adam, I want to talk about how realistic it is that some of our listeners could be getting into this business. So let's start with something fun. Tell me a success story. I mean, you work with people all the time. You provide them content. Tell me about someone you've worked with that you would point to and say, now, this is a success story. This is what it could look like.
Yeah, I mean, I can, the biggest success story I think we've had really is we worked with a client. It was their first website. They actually ran, running a family office. They were in the investment space anyway. They'd heard about website investing and wanted to get started, but didn't really know anything. Kind of like, they wanted to outsource everything. So they came to us and we kind of run through, we have what we call growth packages, which are essentially for people that want to be aggressive. They've typically, got investment that they want to put into something, and you can start at various scales. Like Mark said, you can start off really slow and it just takes time, or you can actually bring a lot of investment up front and just shorten the time horizon typically. So he was on that end of the spectrum. We started working together in December 2021. And we built the website. The website launched in January 2022. And I think I'm getting these dates right. I think, Mark, am I?
Yeah. It doesn't really matter.
And he outsourced the whole project to us. We did the keyword research. We wrote the content. We actually built the website from scratch. An important part of this kind of success story, I think, and I don't want to get too technical about it, but it was built on what we call an aged domain. And essentially that means the domain that we built on, the www.domainname.com, had been used in the past by another website, by another business, and it had been around for a long time. It had been around for about 20 years. And during that time, it was this other business in the past. It had built up a lot of history with Google, a lot of trust, and a lot of kind of brand equity with the search engine. And then that business actually went out of business, and the owner of the domain name didn't register it. They didn't re-register it. So the domain name essentially expires, and we picked it up, or the client, in this case, the customer bought it. He didn't kind of know what he was buying, essentially. Bought it and came to us and said, I bought this domain name. Can you help me build on it? So we built the website, and very quickly it took off. Within the first 3 months, essentially, it was making a couple of $1,000s a month, which is, it's very quick. We talk about SEO and building these websites being a long-term thing. This one, for whatever reason, took off a lot quicker than you would typically expect. And rather than taking that cash flow and keeping it for himself, he decided to keep reinvesting that money back in. So we launched with a large amount of content and quite aggressive. And then very quickly, within the first couple of months, he started reinvesting all of this money back in. And the site continued to grow very, very quickly. And within 12 months, he was making around $40,000 a month from the website. So much so that he decided then that he was going to put his son in charge of the family office business, and he was going to actually focus on this business full time and turn it into an actual real business. And based on the kind of the way these websites are valued, they're typically valued at a 30 to 40x multiple of their monthly revenue. Within a 12-month period, that guy had an asset worth $1.4 to $1.6 million on his hand. And really, he'd invested about $250,000 into it. But a lot of that actually was reinvested from that monthly profit. So the return on that website was just insane for him.
And I'd point out here something that maybe people don't realize. When Adam talks about family offices, usually what a family office is, especially in the United States, is it's a very wealthy family, often billionaires or hundreds of millionaires. And they have a family office, which basically the whole goal of that family office is to get outsized returns. And that's because this family office supports a family, which is usually lots and lots of people, and just getting your basic S&P 500 index returns usually is not good enough for them. So just something to think about. If the family offices are starting to go into the website business, it's kind of a sign that this is the place, at least at the moment, where outsized returns are available. So Mark, if I'm Joe Schmo, and I'm looking at getting into this business, first and foremost, am I looking at starting one website, or am I really looking at this idea of having a portfolio of websites?
Yeah. Well, first, nice to meet you, Joe. But yeah, so to start with, it's a good question because, like, we've already spoken about some websites take off more quickly than others. Therefore, it's tempting to want to start multiple sites. Now, it really depends on your budget, your ambition and that kind of thing. But for most people, we say you've got to start with one site and make that a success. Whether it takes off quickly or whether it takes off slowly, keep focusing on one site, because if you try and spread yourself too thin over multiple sites, none of them are going to be successful. So you need to focus on one and really, really put all your time and effort or money into that to try and make that first one a success. You can make that one a success and ultimately sell it, then you've kind of got money to reinvest further down the road and then start building out a portfolio. And that's how both Adam and I started, and how a lot of people start. They make the success of their first one, they make some money, and then they maybe start a couple and then outsource a lot of the work and kind of grow maybe a couple of sites. And then you can kind of get into that situation down the road where some of it's cash flow, some of it is you sell, as I mentioned before. But also you get this kind of luxurious position where you have multiple horses in the race, and some are just going to perform, and you can't always explain it, but some are just going to perform better than others. And that's where then you should really be reinvesting the majority of your money on those ones that are the star performers in your portfolio. So it gives you the luxury of not having to wait if it's waiting. If some of them are slower and some of them are faster, just invest in the fast ones, and you tend to get to the sale quicker. You tend to get that money back that you can kind of then reinvest, and it's like a flywheel effect. But ultimately, you want to get to a portfolio because that lowers your risk as well in terms of Google or anything else. If a Google update comes down and crushes the traffic for one of your sites, you got others to kind of fall back on. So you do want to get there, but you don't want to try and do it too fast. Now, the guy that Adam talked about, actually, he started around, I think it was 4 websites, Adam, because he had money to invest. And this one was the outsized winner. So, we just kept reinvesting in that one. And the other ones kind of, we just kept ticking along. So, we do have people that are investors that come to us and say, yeah, I get it. I understand it. I don't want to wait. I just want to get going and just do 4 of them, but they've got the resources to be able to go big on all 4 and not, the situation you don't want to get in is like where you're just spreading yourself too thin, as I mentioned. If you can, that's great for you. But for most people, it's just start on one site and focus really hard on that.
Adam, you're kind of killing my groove here, because I was dreaming of setting up a website, having it pretty much on auto drive and just collecting the passive income. But as you guys are talking about, it's quite a bit of work, especially in the beginning. This is not a passive investment, is it?
If you are doing it yourself, then it's anything but passive. It's hard work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. And it's yeah, it's like any other business. The more you put in, the more you get out. It can be relatively passive though if you want to outsource it, and essentially that's the whole reason we set up our business. We understand that there are people out there that either don't want to learn this kind of thing, don't have the time, or they just want to have someone, another expert, take on all of these tasks for them, and it can be pretty passive. So it really depends on how you approach it, and if you want it to be passive, it can be. It's never going to be 100% passive. I think anybody promising anything that's 100% passive is, they're pulling your leg essentially. There's always stuff that you have to take control of it yourself in certain aspects, but lots of the heavy lifting can be outsourced, and it can be pretty passive for you.
Mark, talk about competition. I mean, aren't there 100 guys just like you ready to jump in and steal your thunder once you get established?
No, there's not actually. So as a business, so Adam and I would work with like Upwork and places like that to try and get some stuff for our own website portfolios when we first started out. And there were a couple of agencies that did similar to what Niche Website Builders does, not quite the full end-to-end hands-off kind of service, but they did something. But we were never happy with the quality of the work that they provided. So we were always on Upwork trying to hire some people, and then you'd end up giving 20 people a trial to find one good person, and then that good person they disappear off and you can never contact them again. So whatever, it's just issues of dealing with freelancers in that kind of capacity. So Adam and I actually just said, we met online through this shared interest, and we said, let's just pool our money. We'll get some staff in that are our staff that we can train to do it our way. We'll pool our resources, and they'll work on just our portfolios, and we'll pay them between us. So we started that, and we already started doing some case studies out to a community as well. We had a Facebook group and a blog, and kind of were starting to get known for the case study that we were sharing, and because we share everything that we do from beginning to end, we still do now. And we just offered our team out to some people, and then it just took off from there. So the business exploded because there was a gap in the market. And really, I mean, there are people that do similar stuff to us now still. We would argue that we still do it the best, better than anybody, of course. But we really do, we stay on the forefront of what we do. We do it. One thing that sets us apart is that Adam and I still have our own portfolios. We walk the walk as well as talk the talk, which you can't really say for a lot of other similar agencies in our space.
But Mark, let me take it kind of the step further. I'm not just talking about you guys and your business, but what if I'm out there making a website? I mean, how at risk am I to have a competitor come and look at the same niche that I'm in, especially if I'm being successful, and kind of steal my thunder?
Yeah, apologies. So absolutely right. There's not many niches out there that haven't already been tapped into. So most niches, you're going to have competition. They're saturated. In fact, that's actually a red flag. If you find a space where you think, hey, there's no website doing this, then I could be the only one and the first one I could clean up. Actually, probably people have tried it before, and there's a reason why that space doesn't work. It's actually a bad sign. But absolutely, yeah, there are other competitors, but you just got to do it better than them. That makes it sound simple, but also you can go very, very narrow on kind of the things that you focus on. So you could kind of be the best site in a very, very narrow, specific part of the niche that you're working in. And that's really kind of how the keyword research works. You're looking for those opportunities within a space where actually they're a little bit more underserved, where you can compete and win out. And once you start getting that traffic, you start to get that trust from Google, you start to get credibility for being an authority within that niche, and it then becomes easier to write around all the other topics in that niche as well. And it goes from there. So yes, you will have competition, but there's ways that you can kind of still be successful.
And I also think there's when you're starting out with a new website or a younger website, then you are one of those new guys trying to compete. But once you've become established in the space, which I think is what you're talking about, Jordan, where you're established, but then you've got new websites coming after you. You already got the traffic and you've got new websites coming after you. The goal then shifts from, you've got the traffic. The goal then shifts to how do you build a moat around that business and that website. And this is really what we are teaching people now, essentially, is to treat the website not just as a website, as a blog to make money, but to treat it as a real business and to build your moat. And you can do that in a number of different ways. You can do that by creating a community around the space. You can do that, like I say, by creating newsletters, by digital products. You can do that by doing digital PR. Digital PR actually is a very good way to build a moat around the business. You think about digital PR as in you are doing outreach to journalists with unique data sets and unique angles and trying to get them to run with stories that you've created to link back to your website. And that can result in links from incredible websites. We're talking about Forbes and CNN and New York Times, where you couldn't really buy links from. It's really hard to get links from. And if you run a digital PR campaign for an extended period of time and you get those kinds of links, it's very hard then for newcomers to come in and replicate that in a quick or over a short period of time, essentially. So you can build that moat around you in certain different ways to ensure that even if new websites do come in, you make it as hard as possible for them to compete and take those spots away from you.
So Mark, we've created these niche sites. We've built our moat. We've got our SEO going. We're churning away with our income through ads and affiliates, and maybe we've got a course or a product. And we're starting to think now is the time to really cash in. Tell me about how you go about selling a website.
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways. You can sell through private deals. So Adam and I have kind of, I guess, got some connections now, so that kind of makes it easier for us. But there are ways that you can find people that are interested in buying and selling. We have a Facebook group called Niche Website Flippers. It has around 25,000 members, where people are selling generally at a lower level, or buying and selling kind of websites. So you can kind of find communities like that where you can kind of buy and sell websites. The thing is, if you're new, you just got to be careful like what you're buying. We don't vet the sites that are on there. They are at people's own risk. We couldn't possibly vet all of them that arrive on our Facebook group. And then generally for like higher level websites, Marketplace is one of the places, is somewhere that you would buy and sell websites. So they're essentially places, like an eBay for websites, I guess is the best way to put it. So there's one called Empire Flippers. There's one called FE International, Investors Club. We're actually launching our own marketplace in a few weeks' time. We're rebranding, got a new website. So we're actually launching our own marketplace as well, where we will be actually vetted. So anything that comes onto our platform, we'll give it the once over and make sure that it's a credible business. That we've had customers in the past that have bought sites from different places where people have sent them false information about how much the site was earning or how much traffic it was getting. And they were just too naive to understand how to verify that and make sure that what that person was saying was true, and have lost, a lot of money in those kind of transactions. So a safer place is a marketplace, because you get some protection from there. So yeah, we'll have a marketplace too, where everything's vetted that goes onto the platform, and we help both the buyer and the seller kind of make that deal happen for a commission, essentially.
So if Adam, someone is listening right now and they're like, I want in, what is usually the first step if you're considering getting into the website business?
Sure. So you've got two options really to consider. The first one is, am I going to buy a website that's already cash flowing? The downside to that essentially is you're going to pay a higher price because you're paying a multiple on that revenue. So I want to buy a website today that's making $1,000 a month. I'm going to pay $35,000, $40,000 for that today. If that is the case, and you want the cash flow from day one, and you've got that capital to invest up front, it's really as simple as go into some of these marketplaces and start looking at the deals, essentially understanding what kind of websites are for sale on there. There's display ad websites that we've mentioned. There's affiliate type websites. There's people's websites that sell products on Amazon, for example. There's a ton of different business models that are out there. Understanding them, getting comfortable with them, listening to podcasts and episodes that people talk about buying and selling. Like Mark mentioned earlier, we've got our own kind of YouTube channel and podcast, and we've had guests on there talk about buying websites, selling websites. Me and Mark have shared a ton of our own experience of buying websites, selling websites, what we've done to them, how we found them, and that kind of thing. So that's option one. The second option really is deciding that I don't want to buy a website. I want to build a website from scratch, where the cash flow isn't from day one, obviously, because like we say, it takes time, but typically the return is a lot higher over the duration. I'm talking like, a 3-year period, essentially. Typically what we find is the ROI is higher because you haven't had to put that massive amount of money out up front. And in that case, you either decide that you want to do it yourself and you get comfortable doing the keyword research and writing the content and doing all those things, or you find a partner to help you with that, such as ourselves, who can then kind of guide you through the process. So really, the first step is just deciding which route do you want to go down, and from there, understanding what the options are with each route.
Mark, what's the biggest mistake newbies make?
The biggest mistake is I think the biggest mistake is kind of, as I mentioned before, it's like they take too long to get started. They probably don't understand the amount of effort that kind of has to go into it, and they underestimate that effort. And you've got to really be kind of mentally strong if you're going to do this yourself, that you're going to commit to this and you're going to follow through on that as well. And I think that's probably the biggest mistake that people make from at the beginning. Like they underestimate like just how much work it's going to take if they're doing it themselves.
Well, Adam and Mark, I wanted to thank you for coming on today. I think this is a time where we're all looking at diversifying our portfolio. We're looking at ways of protecting our wealth. On top of that, many people have dreamed of this idea of building websites that eventually start bringing in income at night, while you're sleeping, during the day, while you're doing other things. What you guys have made it clear is there is some work involved. And certainly if you have some capital, there's actually the know-how out there to help you do this. But this can be a way to bring in returns, especially in this time when we're all looking at alternative investments, because we're thinking that the stock market, the S&P 500 index, the total stock market index, may not bring in as good returns as we thought it was going to over the next 10 years. And this is a viable place to invest money and start a business. I want to end this episode the way I end every episode by asking you both what's coming up next for Niche Website Builders and how people can reach out to you. So Adam, why don't you first tell us what is coming up next in your business?
Sure. So Mark already kind of mentioned it there. We're launching a marketplace to complete the whole cycle. At the moment, we can help you build a website and scale a website, but we don't have that final step of selling a website. So the marketplace will allow the full life cycle where you can buy a website and we can help you grow it, or we can build a website, grow it, and then you can kind of exit it. And then essentially, we're still what we would consider a startup. We're a 3.5-year-old company. We've grown very quickly. We're over 100 full-time employees now, but we're still ambitious. We still think that there's more we can do. We want to essentially be the go-to company for anybody that's interested in growing, developing, building, buying, selling these kinds of content websites. And that's essentially what our next 3 to 4 years looks like, is growing, taking us there, and providing as much value to our customer base and our audience as we possibly can.
And Mark, what is the best way to learn more about you guys, or possibly even hire you in the future?
Yes, there's a number of ways you can get hold of us. So our website to start with is nichewebsite.builders. When we rebrand, you get redirected, so there's no worries there. But nichewebsite.builders is the place you want to go. We have a YouTube channel. Just search for Niche Website Builders on YouTube as well, and you'll find us there. We have a few Facebook groups. So one's called Niche Website Builders. Notice the theme there. Another one's called Niche Website Flippers. We also have a podcast. which is Niche Website Builders too. So the podcast goes on to our YouTube channel, so you can watch it in video form as well. But we also have live streams on our YouTube, which don't feature on our podcast. So you want to subscribe both places. We cover different stuff on the live streams versus the podcast. Podcasts are generally interviews like this. Live streams are often tactics and strategies and things like that. So yeah, that's probably the best places to find us.
Well, Adam Smith and Mark Mars, thank you guys very much for coming on Earn and Invest and teaching us about the commerce of websites.
Thanks,
Thank
Doc.
you, Jordan. It's been great.
That's a wrap. Awesome. I leave things running just for a few minutes as we chat as part of the after show. I think it's fascinating, but I love this idea that we should be really diversifying our portfolio with some alternative assets. And right now, websites are a really fruitful one. And I think people don't realize, I mean, we've all heard about the big sales, and especially, so I'm part of the personal finance and the financial independence retire early world. And so we all know of people who've sold their sites for 6 or 7 figures. But that's like one small cut of it. There are a lot of people making some good income every month and making maybe 6 to 7 figures on selling their site as opposed to higher. But a lot of people are doing very well.
Yeah,
it's so true about not knowing. A lot of people not knowing about it. I ran my own digital marketing agency and was in SEO for like 10 years before I even considered doing it for myself and understanding what money can be made from blogs. And I was in that space, let alone people that are not even in the space. I think same for you, Adam, right? And that light bulb suddenly goes off of like, hang on, you can make money from how much from blogs? And I've got all the skills, personally, all the skills that you need to do that. Yeah. So and that's one of the big things we're trying to do. We're trying to raise awareness. And this is why we're doing things like this, is with investors and people are looking for alternative investments, and just try to raise the profile of that.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine, Grant Sabatier, is doing the same thing. More privately, he has a group that goes and buys websites, monetizes them, and sells them or holds on to them and cash flows them. But the family office thing is big. He said he's been approached by many different family offices looking for him to help them buy websites or develop websites. And so there are a lot of people who are really looking, and I don't know if you guys have been approached by a lot of these people, but there are a lot of them out there who are looking for your expertise.
Sorry, I was just going to say, there's all we've talked about today, the kind of on the smaller spectrum side of things, but for me, it gets interesting, and you can tell the space is really developing when the bigger people come in, like the family offices or even private equity. And there was a trend a couple of years back where private equity companies were coming in and buying up Amazon FBA businesses. They're called aggregators. They would buy up all these FBA businesses and put them together into a portfolio and kind of realize the synergies. And we're seeing that happen in the content space now, where private equity is coming in and they're buying up these kinds of content websites and aggregating them that way. We had an interesting call with a company recently called VentureKite that were doing the exact same thing. They just raised, was it 3 million, I think, Mark, in private funding to go out and acquire sites. And they had very aggressive targets. They were talking about by the end of 2025 being at like 25 million EBITDA, and they were looking for an exit at that point, And for me, like, the small side of stuff is cool, but to see the big money coming in now just means that there is more awareness and it's becoming kind of more legitimized as an actual asset class, and people are taking it serious, which is great.
Yeah, it's also interesting, like when you see the big guys like that coming in, you also start seeing that there's like this real opportune window.
Yeah.
And you're right at that beginning, or that kind of space, that window right there. Yeah, it's interesting.
I did a presentation a couple of months back on the real big end of the scale, a company called Future PLC. And essentially, they've been doing this since the 90s. They've been buying up digital assets. They're a listed company, but they are playing a whole different game. So, we talked about multiples being 30 to 40x the monthly revenue. Because they're a public company, when you work out what their multiples are. They're at the 150 to 200
Yeah.
times multiple, and they're buying up these assets in the 7 to 8 figure range at the 40 to 50 or 60x
Yeah.
mark because
Yeah.
they can a bigger multiple, but they're just playing multiple arbitrage at that point, which again is just another angle that they're taking and they're playing, and it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for coming on. I will let you know when this is going to come out, but it'll probably be 3 to 4 weeks. I'm going to hit the
Awesome.
stop here. Let's see here.